I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. We're going to get things started with our special guest today, Professor Mohammad Marandi. You have seen him on the show before. He's a professor at the University of Tehran. We have a lot to get into. Welcome back, Professor Marandi.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Sabrina. It's always a pleasure, always an honor.
All right, so I guess I want to get started with what has happened with the activists that were a part of the Samud flotilla. I know you've been watching this as well as the rest of us. For those who are not aware, over 400 activists have been kidnapped by Israel. They are being tortured from what some of the activists who have been released are saying. They are obviously held against their will. And I do want to show you one of the videos that came out here. In fact, Professor Marandi, I believe, you shared this one about what the IDF has been doing to Greta Thunberg. Everyone listen to this.
Hepsi siyasetçisi, hepsi bize böyle böcek muamelesi yapmaya kalktılar ama herkese böyle davranıyorlar. Greta'ya çok ağır işkence yaptılar. Evet, Greta'ya zulmettiler. Küçücük çocuk da Greta. Onu süründürdüler, İsrail bayrağını öptürdüler. Yani Naziler ne yaptıysa aynısını yaptılar.
Yeah, so it's not in English, so I'll tell you guys what he said. Basically, what he was saying is that they grabbed Greta Thunberg by her hair and dragged her. So he saw this in front of his face. He said he witnessed it firsthand. That is one of the activists there that spoke out. And here's another one here that I want to bring in as well.
Greta Thunberg, a brave woman who is only 22 years old, she was humiliated and wrapped in an Israeli flag and exhibited like a trophy. I had a feeling of being in a really barbaric place, and I really hope that that this barbarism might be over soon. First, we were kidnapped in international waters. Then they took us to land, and once on land, they behaved like a terrorist group. People were kicked. We were left without fresh water for over 2 days. Overall, they took every opportunity to humiliate any of us. We were treated like terrorists because we thought we were terrorists. So I was unlucky enough to get out just while Ben-Gvir was coming. And so the police used very, very tight handcuff on us that stopped our circulation. They blindfolded us and they put us in a van with barely any clothes and with very, very low temperature. So high conditioning that was like freezing. And they kept us there for probably 3 hours.
Yeah, so this is torture. That gentleman there was an Italian journalist. He also added to the Greta story and said that they wrapped her in an Israeli flag, that they humiliated her in front of everyone. Professor Marandi, I want to get your perspective about this, all these activists that have been kidnapped by Israel.
First of all, we have to keep in mind that they were, as he pointed out, abducted in international waters. But also, once if they were able to enter Gazan waters under international law, even under international law accepted by the West, accepted by the Europeans and the North Americans, Gaza is independent of the Israeli regime, and the Israeli regime is not supposed to be in Gaza or the West Bank. And so they should be able to freely enter Gaza, and by once leaving international waters, that does not mean that they would have been entering so-called Israeli territory. Now, of course, many of us don't believe in the legitimacy of the Israeli regime in the first place. We don't accept apartheid. We all believe that the South African model is the legitimate model where everyone has to be treated as equal human beings across the land. But even if we were to accept the Western model, the official Western model, not the unofficial one, the unofficial Western model is to support the Greater Israel. But the official Western model is to preserve a supremacist regime within the 1967 borders, and then return the West Bank and the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian people, and that makes the Israeli occupation in both these areas completely illegal. So what these people were doing was legal, and in any case, they were in international waters. But I think this was a huge mistake by the regime, because the flotilla, now people had differing views of the flotilla, and I don't like getting involved in these debates. But one of the strengths was that it had people from across the world, and also it brought about activism, or it strengthened activism across the Mediterranean. Because as these boats were going from port to port, people on different islands and in different countries, they would come to see them off, or they would come to welcome them, and that enhanced this sense of solidarity. So I think the fact that the Israeli regime prevented infant formula from getting to the people of Gaza was expected. But the awareness that the flotilla helped create, through the very fact that people from all over the world were a part of it. So when they're arrested, people across the world recognize that people from their country, from their region, from their continent were involved, and they're being tortured or they're being mistreated. And this only makes the situation worse for the Israeli regime, especially at a time when the regime is silencing critics, it's imposing restrictions on free speech, and it is taking over TikTok and other Western and other media controlled by the United States or elements within the United States. So I think this was a catastrophic move by the Israeli regime. They could have done it differently, but being a racist, supremacist regime, they don't understand how bad things are for them now. And I'm quite surprised, actually, because, I mean, in general, I've been surprised for a very long time now, because I always thought that the Zionist regime and its supporters across Europe and North America, that they were the best when it came to propaganda. But I'm coming to believe that they were always very overrated, and that they are pretty incompetent, very foolish, of course, barbaric and inhumane, as the gentleman in the clip rightly pointed out. But they are doing a terrible job.
Yeah, I also want to remind people there are Americans there that are detained as well. And I'm sure you're aware of this as well, Professor Marandi. I haven't seen one. Well, nope, I take that back. Earlier this morning, I did see a message from Congress member Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna did make the call that something needs to be done. People need to, he was naming the fact that there are Americans there that are kidnapped. So he's the only one I've seen so far. I tagged Ayanna Pressley, Elizabeth Warren, and Ed Markey, that there are two brothers from Massachusetts that are, from what I understand, related to Ralph Nader, that are also were kidnapped by Israel. Silence. Nothing but crickets. All of these politicians, with the exception of Ro Khanna, are very, very quiet. And just imagine if it were the other way around, right? Like, I mean, it's Americans that were detained by Israel. Imagine if those Americans or kidnapped by like China or Russia, for example. You see the difference? It's just like they continue to give Israel a pass. But I agree with you that I think this flotilla, in my opinion, is getting even more attention. I talked to, some friends of mine who have not been just politically set. They're not into politics, and they're not just really paying attention to the news. They try to tune all of that out. But they even found out about this one. So it has received a lot of attention. What do you think about the activists that came from Turkey? Like after those ships were detained by Israel, there were activists from Turkey that I think sent out like at least 40, a little over 40 boats to go out there as well. What do you think? What message does that send?
It shows that the people of Turkey or Turkey are very different from the government. The government is complicit in this genocide. It's been working with the Israeli regime for the last 2 years. It continues to transport cheap fuel from Baku to Israel to fuel the genocide. It until recently, Turkish Airways or Turkish there were direct flights, and they do trade. Ships go back and forth, and apparently Mr. Erdogan's relatives are involved in the trade between the two regimes. But this shows that ordinary Turks are completely with the Palestinians. Now, the Turkish government pretended to be with supporting the flotilla, like a couple of European countries. They sent a ship and a drone, but they pulled away alongside the Italians and didn't do anything about what the Israelis, in order to protect the flotilla. It just shows the gap between the regime and the people, but it also shows how the public across the world is becoming increasingly angry, and direct action is becoming something that governments are increasingly worried about. In Morocco, for example, we're seeing unrest, and the people are going to the streets in outrage, but also because of local grievances. The more indifference we see from these regimes, whether it's Turkey or Egypt or Jordan or Saudi Arabia or the Emirates or whoever, the more angry their people become. I was on a program a while back, and the host, he was in the Emirates, and I told him, look, where you are, people are not allowed to express their views on Palestine, and he admitted that that's true. So as the situation continues to deteriorate, these governments become increasingly less legitimate in the eyes of their own people. So just as the United States and the Europeans, the elites have lost the public, and public opinion has turned against them and their Zionist allies, the same is happening in this part of the world, and that's not good for the United States, because the governments are mostly proxies of the United States. And just one other thing that I'd like to add, Sabrina, and that is that you're speaking about Americans from your town, from your city, from your part of the United States. We had a Lebanese family that was massacred, I think, less than 2 weeks ago in Lebanon, and in southern Lebanon, a Lebanese American family, 4 kids and 2 parents, and the father and 3 of the kids were killed. The mother survived, and I think one of the children who was badly wounded. Hopefully that child survived. So 3 American-born kids were murdered, children, small kids, and the father, who was also American Lebanese. But there was no protest by the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, or in Tel Aviv, or Al-Quds in Palestine, nor the State Department. No one protested. Completely indifferent to the murder of 3 American children, passport holders, to American man, a passport holder. They were completely indifferent. That is how it is. The United States does not care. The United States government does not care about its citizens. It cares about the Israeli regime. It does not care about children. It obviously doesn't care about Palestinian children, but it does not care about children from families that are not firmly in the camp of the Zionist regime.
Yeah, it's true. They show us also here in America every day how much they apparently care about us. One of the things I wanted to get your perspective about this Gaza peace plan from Donald Trump, which I said a day or two ago that this isn't a real peace plan. What do you think happened here, Professor Marandi? Israel seems to be very upset that Donald Trump said, stop the bombing. I saw a video earlier today from Marco Rubio also saying, stop the bombing to exchange the hostages, etc. And there were multiple Israeli outlets that all of a sudden started putting Donald Trump's face on Hamas, started to say that Donald Trump is Hamas. It's just really, really crazy, considering that was exactly what was laid out in that peace plan that Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to at that point in time at the press conference in front of everyone. The fact that Israel will agree to something publicly, and they've done this like since October 7th, obviously, and then behind the scenes they do what they want to do anyway. What do you think is going to happen with this hostage deal that is coming up? Because I personally don't foresee Israel stopping the bombing, and I also don't foresee Israel leaving Gaza, even though there was something in the deal about that they would exit and not occupy, and that they would not annex the West Bank. What do you think is going to happen here? And what do you think Trump's play is? Is he just trying to sort this out very quickly in such a way so he can put his focus on Iran? Because that's what some of us are wondering.
Well, it's impossible really for me to say what's going on in the mind of Trump. I don't think anyone really knows. When you watch his speeches, it's sometimes it's just too embarrassing to watch. I mean, even though I dislike him, but when he was speaking in front of the generals, I just couldn't watch. Or when he was speaking at the UN, I felt embarrassed, even though he has nothing to do with me and I don't support him. But it was just, I was wondering, like, what's wrong with this person? So I don't know what the real reasons are. There could be a multiple reasons. One is that Trump admitted apparently that that Israel is now unpopular, that it has been isolated across the world. And this is a big deal. The Israeli regime is hated everywhere. I look at the Charlie Kirk issue. I don't know what happened to him. Obviously, the FBI narrative has fallen apart. But the very fact that from the very start people were suspicious of the Israeli regime shows how evil the regime has become in the eyes of even ordinary Americans. People across the world expect this sort of thing from the regime, even if it's in the United States, even if it's against someone who's supported them so much in the past. Now, again, I don't know what happened to him. I don't believe the official narrative, at least from what I've seen so far, that the evidence presented and the critiques that have been provided. But I have no idea, what really happened. But that's not the point. For me, the point is, why is it that it is so believable for people that the regime carried it out? Because that's the natural behavior of the regime. That's how it behaves. And so it has become despised across the world. And I think that there are people in the United States and among Zionists who think that Netanyahu is his method of rule and his genocidal, openly genocidal behavior is destroying Israel. I think he is destroying Israel. I believe that Israel is dead. I don't think it's going to last many more years. It has been delegitimized in the eyes of the world. It is despised. It has shown itself to be far weaker than it presents itself. It hasn't even been able to take Gaza after 2 years. It hasn't defeated Ansarullah. Hezbollah is still armed and it's preparing itself. It lost against Iran. It's not. I mean, they won in Syria, the CIA dirty war that began in 2011, it succeeded, but beyond that, they have had no real victories. So the delegitimization of the Israeli regime in the eyes of the world is big, and I think there are people in the United States who are in among Western elites that are worried. That could be one reason why they want to see this stop. Not because they care about the Palestinian people. No, they don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about Palestinian kids. They don't care about Palestinian women at all. At all. It's not important for them. But they are upset that it is becoming it is very important for the rest of us, and that people across the world are mobilized. The flotilla is just is one example. Some people criticize the flotilla. Some people think it was a great idea. I don't like getting into these arguments, but what is important is that the flotilla shows how broad the support for the Palestinian people is, and how much effort has gone into this move, where hundreds of people literally put their lives at risk to make a point, to send the world a message. This is very different from what we had in the past. You know, when I was young, Palestinian supporters were very small in number. And even in alternative media, it was just one of many issues, because many thought that there was no hope, I suppose. And many just there was no awareness. Now everyone knows what's happening. And even the fact that they're shutting down TikTok and they're shutting down mainstream media, even though mainstream media was always biased, but that itself is making it worse for the regime, because the regime is seen as not only carrying out genocide with US support and Western support in Palestine, but also it's impacting people's lives in the United States itself. People are not allowed to speak anymore. People are not allowed to see what they want on social media. So what's going on in Palestine is having a direct effect on people's lives in the United States and how they can conduct themselves. So that may be one issue. I also, maybe, I'm just guessing, someone could say that Trump maybe was hoping that the Palestinians would capitulate, and after making this threat. I don't buy that. If that is the case, the Palestinians did not capitulate. The Hamas response was very well crafted, and it basically rejected foreign rule over Palestine, and it opened the door to negotiations. But if you look at what Trump himself posted, the Hamas text, which was supported by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the other resistance groups, if you look at that text and compare it to Trump's threats, you'll see that effectively Trump backed down. Now, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, or next month, but it does show that Trump is not as powerful as he pretends he is, and that the Palestinians are not intimidated in the way in which Trump would have hoped. So the Palestinians are playing a very sophisticated game. They've written a very good response. The Israelis, of course, are being foolish, and we don't know what Trump is going to do tomorrow.
Right. This is true. This is true. I would also say Israel making these efforts to basically, swarm social media by paying American influencers. To me, my response to that is that it's too late. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like, we already saw everything that we needed to see. So paying all these influencers to get them to flood TikTok and YouTube and X also, it doesn't make any sense at this point. People already know what's real and what we saw in the images that we have seen. So it's just, it's bizarre to me that they even think that would work. But I want to pivot to Iran for just a second, because many of us are starting to pay attention to the fact that it has already been predicted by some of the members of the Likud party that Israel is going to attack Iran before the end of this year. And this is where I think a lot of the focus is going to go to. And part of me wonders if Donald Trump is just like, we got to wrap up this Gaza situation and we can focus on Iran. I feel like that's where a lot of the focus and the energy is going to go towards, especially since I saw this article the other day. Breaking news, China state media announced that China is transferring 10 of its J-10 fighter jets from Pakistan to Iran. I wanted to get your take about that because, first of all, I did check to see if this existed. Sometimes these things on X, people post stuff and there's no article attached to it. But I did check that, and there were articles about that. How do you feel about this? I have a poll question there in the live chat if people would answer that. I do think that Israel is going to put more of their focus on Iran. And I think that Donald Trump and Marco Rubio are going to put their efforts in that direction. But this response here from China sending, transferring jets to Iran, are we headed towards World War III?
Well, obviously, the focus is always going to be on Iran because the West knows that the power that supports the resistance in Palestine and elsewhere lies in Iran. The heroism of the Palestinian people, the Lebanese people, the Yemeni people is extraordinary. But at the end of the day, it's Iranian support, logistical support. Iran supports Gaza through tunnels. They've been fighting for 2 years. They're building new tunnels. They're building new capabilities all the time. That needs help. You cannot be self-sufficient in a 2-year war against a genocidal regime in a small place like Gaza, which is surrounded. So the Iranians, just as in the past, they helped them create these defense capabilities. They're continuing to do so. And Yemen, of course, being the other country that is supporting the Palestinian people, they too obviously are getting help from Iran, even though they have their own brilliant engineers who are working to produce, missiles and capabilities to support the Palestinian people. But obviously, the Iranians are helping them, and so is Hezbollah, and all of these resistance groups are helping each other. So it's understandable that the United States would want to target Iran because the Iranians are the only the Iranian leaders and the Iranian people are. It's the only country which truly supports Palestine. The rest are just for show. Of course, Yemen is also truly supporting the Palestinian people, but they too need Iran support. So I don't find it strange that the Americans and the Israelis would like to take out the head of the snake, as they like to call us, or the whatever sinister term they make up for Iran. But the first war that they carried out against Iran, which was a blitzkrieg attack, and the Americans, while they were negotiating with Iran, they were secretly being deceptive and preparing for an attack against Iran. The initial strike on Iran was painful, and we had lots of senior officials and scientists and academics who were murdered on day one. But the Iranians quickly regrouped and they defeated the Israeli regime. The best evidence that I often cite is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, after the ceasefire, said that during the last 3-4 days, the Israeli regime was in deep trouble, and Trump basically saved them by putting proposals to Iran, which Iran initially did not accept. And then after 3-4 days, apparently the Americans gave some concessions, and the Iranians accepted a halt in the hostilities. I would imagine that, the Iranians, without a doubt, they're preparing themselves for another war, possibly a more severe attack would be carried out against Iran by the Israeli regime with U.S. support or with U.S. direct participation. It would be very difficult for the United States to get engaged directly because they would either have to use bases around Iran, and that would make these countries complicit, and Iran will punish them, or they will have to fly from far away, like from Diego Garcia or elsewhere. But of course, they are using bases in Syria. The United States have a very good relationship with the Al-Qaeda government in Syria, and Al-Qaeda, after all, they've gone back to New York after what we were told on 9/11 that they carried out the attack. I don't know, I don't know how they can how they explained that to the American people, that Al-Qaeda, which carried out 9/11, was back in New York in September 2025. But in any case, the United States does have bases there that they can use, but it would be very difficult for the Americans to carry out a war against Iran. And Iran is preparing itself since the halt in hostilities. They began to purchase new equipment, build their own equipment. Iran has a very um, um, effective military industry. We've seen how Iranian missiles, they go right through U.S. and Israeli and European defenses and strike at the heart of Tel Aviv and other cities. So the Iranians are building upon their capabilities. They are looking at their weaknesses, trying to overcome them. They're restructuring, rebuilding, and they're preparing themselves. And I think the chances for another military conflict uh, uh, is significant.
Yeah, I think it could be coming. Gherkin brought up an interesting point here. Iran has the second biggest Jewish community in the Middle East. What do they think about that? But see, Professor Marandi, that just proves my point again that they don't really care about the
Yeah.
Jewish people. They don't just like they don't really care about those hostages. They could have had the hostages back long time ago. Long time
Of
ago.
course.
But it's like, yeah, they're willing to sacrifice their own people for this greater Israel project.
Without a doubt. I mean, when they invaded Iraq, millions of Iraqi Christians left. It was the Iranians who saved the Christian population and the Yazidi population in Iraq. It wasn't the Americans. The Americans were the government, they were supporting ISIS. They were supporting the extremists. Later on, when Iran was and the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces and the Iraqi Armed Forces and Hezbollah and the others were pushing ISIS back and Al Qaeda as well in Syria, then the Americans saw that they were taking territory, so the Americans started getting involved and they turned against ISIS too for a period. But it was their invasion of Iraq and their support of these terror groups in Syria and the spillover effect in Iraq that led to so many Christians leaving the country. They don't care about Christians, just like Palestinians Christians. They don't care about Palestinian Christians. They don't care about the Syrian Christians that are now being murdered by their Al Qaeda allies. They don't care about anyone. As I said, they don't care about American citizens who are murdered by the Israeli regime in southern Lebanon. It's not even in the news. There's no outrage. They don't care about human rights, human values, women's rights, children's rights, anyone's rights. They've gone back to the mid 19th century, the mid 20th century, before before they started talking about human rights and human values and women's rights. They've even put aside the civilizing mission, which they pursued in the 19th century. Now it's just crude barbarism. It's just brutality. Just kill them all, and you have to win and defeat Venezuela and defeat Iran and defeat the Palestinians and just bomb boats in the Mediterranean and bomb buildings in Yemen. Remember the signal discussion where I said that we killed the guy who was entering this apartment built complex and we brought down the building, killing everyone, and everyone was pleased about it. And then it turned out there was no commander there. They just slaughtered families, and everyone in that group and the U.S. political leadership, they were happy about it. And no major newspaper in the United States protested, no media outlet protested. So this has nothing to do with Christians. It has nothing to do with, it doesn't have any, they don't care about Jews. I mean, as one of your viewers rightly pointed out, Iran has a significant Jewish population, the second largest Jewish population in the region. According to the Iranian constitution, Jews have to have an MP, which they do in parliament, and we have synagogues in Tehran. When Max Blumenthal, and when Max Blumenthal came here, I think he did a documentary, or he was supposed to do a documentary on Jewish synagogues. I don't know if it's finished or not in Iran. So he went to Esfahan. There are kosher restaurants in Esfahan and in Tehran as well. There are synagogues in Tehran as well. George Galloway, who was recently arrested at the airport for a number of hours, along with his wife, which that's another story. He too visited a synagogue in Tehran, and but that the Western narrative does not take these into consideration. They don't care about Jews if they're not Zionists. They don't care about Christians as long as they're not Zionists. They don't care about children or women, even if they hold American passports. They can all be easily sacrificed as they are. But Iran is, as I said, Iran is preparing itself, and the Iranian people are very united today. I think even in the West, they're beginning to admit that. I've read some articles about how even the Israeli regime miscalculated. They thought that Iran would collapse because they believe their own propaganda. But Iranians are united, and I think that it's quite clear that if they strike again, the Iranians will hit them back very hard. Now, I don't know what sort of weapons the Iranians are purchasing from China or Russia, but there's no doubt that they'll do whatever they can to prepare themselves for the next phase. But we have to keep in mind that Washington and the Europeans give the Israeli regime everything. I mean, Ukraine can only dream of what Israel gets from the United States and its partners in Europe.
Yeah. The Washington Post, they published this just a couple of days ago. With Iran under pressure, fears grow of new Israeli strikes. The Trump administration sees snapback sanctions as a key pressure tactic. For some U.S. allies, they raise fears of further instability. Now, and here is the president of Iran here. He was displaying a book of Iranians killed by Israeli strikes as he was addressing the UN. That was fairly recent. But now they're talking about a new wave of sanctions, international sanctions, rattling Iranian politics and dragging down an already struggling economy as fears grow among U.S. allies in the region that another round of Israeli airstrikes on the country could be imminent. And Trump feels as though the best way to tackle any of these countries that he takes issue with is the sanctions, right? So like we put sanctions against Russia. Russia's economy is still doing fine. The sanctions haven't crippled Russia's economy as they thought that it would. How would these sanctions impact Iran?
Well, the New York Times engages in propaganda. So when they say it rattles Iranian politics, I don't feel anything is rattled here, but that's the New York Times. What is most interesting, though, Sabrina, is that I thought the Iranian nuclear program, as Trump would keep saying, was obliterated. If it was obliterated, then why are there fears, as they say? They're not fear. I mean, they have the West supports any Israeli attack. I mean, when they attacked first time round, the Europeans said that Israel has the right to defend itself. So it attacks Iran, and the West says, yes, they have the right to defend themselves, which, when it's unprovoked, it's nonsense, but still that's what they say. And it just shows how hypocritical they are. But if the nuclear program is obliterated, then what reason would they have to attack Iran? So obviously, this has nothing to do with you. It never had anything to do with the nuclear program. And this is something that you and I have discussed before. The antagonism towards Iran is not about the nuclear program. It never has been. It's about Iran's support for the Palestinian people. It's the fact that Iran is the only country, along with Yemen, the only government that's willing to pay a price for the Palestinian people and which says that apartheid is illegitimate. Yet, Iran is the only country in this region which says this, but at the same time, it has the second largest, it has preserved the second largest Jewish community, despite the fact that the Americans and the Israeli regime want Iranian Jews to leave the country. They want them to leave. They offer them, concessions and give them extra benefits so that they would leave Iran, but they've stayed, and they have an MP. So while Iran does not is protecting its Jewish, and you don't see any police officers in front of synagogues in Iran or in front of, because no one attacks them. They're a part of Iranian society. They're Iranian citizens. So Iran's problem is not anti-Semitism. It's not its nuclear program. It's not human rights. It's not global warming. It's nothing. It's only about the fact that Iran is the only country that, based on principle, is supporting the Palestinian people and is willing to pay a price for supporting the Palestinian people. Of course, alongside Yemen. But no one else will do this. Everyone else is doing business. I mean, it's sad. If only, for example, the Colombian president was the president of Turkey, or the president of Egypt, or the president of the Emirates, or the leader of Jordan. We'd be in a different situation today. But as things stand, these leaders are all, they're proxies of the United States or allies of the United States, and they're completely unwilling. I mean,
Oh, I think your volume cut out for just a second there, Professor Marandi. Yeah, Eric, I think the volume cut out. I'll ask Eric real quick. Yeah, I think it's on your end. Oh, here we go. 1 second, guys. I think Eric, are you okay? Hold on. Let's see where. 1 second. Give me just a second, guys. I think Eric might be trying to fix that. Let me just go back in here. Maybe that's probably part of the problem.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get him back. Hang on.
Oh, okay. He might have lost. I only had one more question for him. He might have lost connection real quick. Let's go to some of the comments while we wait for Eric to figure that out, guys. Thank you for the super chat, Kinman. Barbarism begins at home. This is a good point. Thank you for that. Thank you, Real Talk Tim. Hey, don't forget your YouTube plaque. Sabby, hello, Eric and Corey and chat. Van Jones is no, we can't say that here, but I gotcha. Clown, SMH, disgusting, free Palestine. We'll get into all of that. And thank you, Netanyahu is on the Epstein list. Who created this account? Eric, we can't say that on here. We don't know that for sure, but thank you so much for that. Thank you, Trusting Success. At this point, can Iran trust the Israeli officials in their country? That's a good point. Good point, Trusting Success. Okay. And Eric, let me know if you need me to go back into that room. Do you need me to go back and open that Zoom room again, or you got it? Do you need me to, oh, you got it?
No, he's you can see here. Let me remove that for now. He's he hasn't come back into the room, so I'll let you know if he comes back. But
okay, he might have lost.
If he doesn't, yeah, maybe he lost connection.
Yeah, he might have lost connection. Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric. Okay, let me go back to where I was. Sometimes the connection, Professor Marandi's in Iran, so sometimes the connection can be a little shaky sometimes. Just making sure I got to all those comments. I think I did. Yeah, he probably just lost connection. Anywho, let me go ahead and tell you guys what else we are going to discuss. Hey. Let me move this out the way. Yeah, I only had one more question for him too, but I think it might be past his time anyway, because I think he has another thing. All right, guys. Today's theme is surprise, surprise, surprise. Let me go ahead and show you that thumbnail, ladies and gents, because we have quite a bit to discuss. The reason why I went live earlier today is because Professor Marandi is in Iran, so he's 9.5 hour, difference between us there. So that's why I went live earlier today. Let me just pull up the thumbnail for you folks. Do, do, do. I don't even know what I did with that thumbnail. Oh, well. It's here somewhere. Problem is I have too many images on here. And now it's like sometimes it's hard to find what I'm looking for. I really need to clear off the desktop. We'll get there at some point. But that point wasn't today. Okay, here we go. All righty. Okay, ladies and gents, let's go ahead and show you that thumbnail. And if you have not done so, be sure to smash that like button. Thank you very much. All right, what else are we discussing tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Because we have quite a bit to get into. It's some crazy things that are happening. There's a reason why I said the theme is surprise, because it's like, oh, surprise. Of course, Professor Marandi was just here to talk to us about Iran and, of course, everything that's happening there with Israel. We're also going to get into what happened here with Theo Von. Theo Von seems to be pushing back on some of Trump's policies. I see Professor Marandi now. I'll bring you back in, Professor. There you are. Theo Von, we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about the Diddy sentencing. I'm sure you guys have heard all about that. We have a case to compare that to as well, with a pastor that was just arrested. I'm also going to dive into Tucker Carlson exposes the IDF. What is happening with the IDF and the Pentagon? And last but not least, Van Jones is getting destroyed by everybody at this point in time on social media, and he honestly deserves it. We're going to get into who Van Jones really is and why he made that horrid comment there. Okay. Professor Marandi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Oh, no worries. I just had one more question for you. I think a lot of people need to know the answers to this. There is this narrative that is floating around and has been floating around since October 7th that Americans are being fooled into thinking that people are starving in Gaza and that babies are being killed, and that is propaganda that is spread by Iran and Qatar, and that Iran and Qatar are paying people to spread this propaganda. One, why do they mention Qatar, considering Qatar is an ally of the United States? And then two, where are they getting this from?
Well, Iran is always easy to antagonize, isn't it? We're the axis of evil. We've been evil for 40-some years, but it's quite easy to turn people against something by accusing Iran to be somehow involved. Traditionally, nowadays it's becoming increasingly difficult because, interestingly, Iran is becoming so popular. People across the world are looking to Iran. People don't believe the propaganda anymore. Many people, at least. I mean, a lot of people contact me. A lot of young Iranians from families who left the country 40-some years ago. Iranians who don't speak Persian, but they contact me and tell me that they support Iran, although they've been hearing nothing but bad things about the country since they've been children. Qatar is a different thing altogether. Qatar is a U.S. proxy. There's no doubt about that. If the United States told Qatar to shut down Al Jazeera tomorrow, they'd shut it down tomorrow. But there's a reason why the United States allows Qatar to play this role that it does, and that is that the United States wants Qatar and Turkey to sort of to have some sort of influence over Hamas and resistance forces. And as we saw, after the Israeli regime bombed Qatar with U.S. support. There's no doubt that the Americans were a part of the airstrike, because the Israelis would have to fly over territory controlled by the United States to carry out these strikes. And there's an American base very close to the Hamas office in Doha. So there's no doubt that the Americans knew what was going on. It's interesting that Saudi air defenses did nothing. Now, either they didn't know, and that's terrible because they've spent trillions of dollars on weapons from the West to no avail, or they knew and just allowed it to happen, which I doubt is true, but it's possible. But in any case, Qatar hosting Al-Qaeda is with U.S. consent. It was at the request of the United States and the Israeli regime. And we do know that the Qatari money and the money from Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are also invested in Israel through Kushner and through others. Money from Qatar goes to Israel. So Trump once said during his first term that he milks these regimes, and the United States continues to do so. So Qatar is it's in this terrible position where on the one hand it does the bidding of the United States, but on the other hand they're accusing it of working against the Israeli regime. But Trump has praised Qatar. Senior officials and players in U.S. politics have praised Qatar. That is basically nonsense. And by the way, Qatar does have a positive role. I'm not saying that anyone who works, for example, in Al Jazeera is not good. They have good reporters. In Gaza, they have martyrs. But Qatar plays a double game. On the one hand, they help the Americans bomb Yemen. Qatar and Turkey were both supporting the Saudi and Emirati genocidal war against Yemen for years, until the Saudis and the Emiratis turned against Qatar, and then Qatar shifted away from them, and then Al Jazeera shifted away from the genocidal war. Initially, Al Jazeera was supporting the war against Yemen, and then later on, after the siege on Qatar, it shifted policy. I was actually banned from Qatar after appearing twice on Inside Story to defend Yemen against the Saudis. And then they gave an internal memo saying that, I shouldn't be, or a verbal memo saying that I shouldn't be invited on any of the programs. So for a couple of years, I was no longer on Al Jazeera. So even though there are good people in Al Jazeera and in other media outlets, but it's controlled by a family dictatorship. There are no elections in Qatar. And Qatar is a Wahhabi regime. The biggest mosque in the country is called the Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab Mosque. And that is the ideology of ISIS. That is the ideology of Al-Qaeda. So, Qatar, it's very, Sabrina, it's very interesting. Qatar and other U.S. allies have been promoting ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And this takfiri ideology, this ideology of Wahhabi and Salafi extremism, with U.S. consent for decades. And so they promote it, and they're used in Syria, they're used in Libya, they're used everywhere. And then Western media says, look at Islam, look how ruthless it is, look how they cut off people's heads. Well, that Islam is American Islam. That's the Islam of Western intelligence agencies, funded by U.S. proxies like Qatar, funded by Turkey, which is Erdogan, which is in NATO, or Saudi Arabia, which is a U.S. proxy. Just the relationship is the relationship between these extremist groups and Islam is in the eyes of mainstream Muslims is that of animosity, because they kill Muslims. They slaughter more Muslims than anyone else. Yet the West funds them, they support them, and then they blame Muslims. They say, look, this is what Muslims do. But the point is that Qatar is key to the funding of these terrorist groups. The guy in Damascus, Jolani Ashara, he was the co-founder of ISIS. Yep. He was the head of Al-Qaeda in Syria. And from my understanding, if I can go back to the Wikipedia page and look at 9/11, I think Al-Qaeda had something to do with 9/11? I'm not quite sure, but I'll go back to the Wikipedia page and then I'll get back to you on that. From my understanding, we were told that Al Qaeda had something to do with it, but so of course I'm joking, but the point is that Qatar plays all these different roles, and it can do so because it's allowed to do so.
Interesting. Well said, Professor Marandi. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sabrina. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.
Bye for now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Professor Marandi. You can see him on a lot of different shows. He appears on Danny Haifong's show. He's been on Piers Morgan to battle back and forth with him, and many, many, many, many more. So if you are not familiar with them, you have been introduced to him now. Definitely check out his work there. Again, today's theme is surprise, surprise, surprise. You'll see that with these stories. I want to get into this story here about Theo Von, because I think it proves a point that even some of Trump's biggest supporters, even some of the people who voted for Trump and stood by that vote, are now saying something a little bit different. Even now, Theo Von, and this goes beyond Israel. This isn't just about the Israel thing. There's something else that Theo Von is bringing up now that I want you guys to see. So even someone like Theo Von, who interviewed JD Vance, who supported Donald Trump, but is always kind of been open to hearing different perspectives. He's interviewed Bernie Sanders. He's had different people on his podcast. Now Theo Von has something else to say, not just about Israel, but about Trump's immigration policies. Donald Trump and his actions and the way that he has gone about his policies is even turning off people who supported him and defended him. Let's get into this segment here from Theo Von. This was sent to me by a viewer. You guys got to hear this.
The Department of Homeland Security put a video up online talking about they started making like trap beat edits and like banger edits to evicting people from the country, right? Or eliminating illegals, maybe some criminals, some people just undocumented, all, just across the spectrum, right? So they put a video of mine that I'd made for somebody in a parking lot, probably like maybe a year and a half ago, just jokingly. I think it was a year and a half ago. They put it in at the front of this Department of Homeland Security, like trap beat. I think they had I'm not sure if they had like young boy lyrics or whatever they had, but it was ridiculous. And the video was a girl had walked up to me in a parking lot and she had said, "Hey, my friend just got deported. What do you have to say? Do you have a message?" I can't remember what it was. And I was just like, "Bye." And I didn't know if it was real or not. I had no idea. I was just joking around. It's a stranger came up to me in a parking lot. I think it was after a show and there were some people gathered around and we were just kind of like BSing and taking pictures and just kind of associating, right? So anyway, long story short, that happens. So this video goes mega viral, 25 million, 30 million views. It's everywhere. And the front of of that Homeland Security video, it's on the White House thing. It's on everything. It's everywhere. And the first 10 seconds of it are me, right? Like, I don't have anything to do with this shit. Nobody asked me about it. Like nobody said, "Hey, this is going to happen." Like, and I have a lot of different thoughts about immigration, right? They're like showing people getting arrested. Like, it's just an intense thing. Like, and why is the government even making these? I don't know. But that's where we're at in the world.
Pause here for just a second. So basically what Theo there was saying is that he made a joke to someone about, they were saying, "Oh, so-and-so got deported," and he said bye or whatever. He said it was a joke. He didn't even know if what he was seeing was real. And apparently someone took that video, it went viral, yada, yada, yada. But I think what is interesting is I think some people may not have known Theo's backstory. Now, see, I knew this because I was first introduced to Theo Von from a show called Road Rules, right? So I'm a millennial and we're going to go there. There was a show on MTV called Road Rules, and it was basically like the sister show of The Real World. Before reality television was as huge as it is now, the only reality TV show I knew at that point in time was The Real World. And of course, you guys probably know this. They took 7 people, put them in a house, people with obviously very different political ideologies, 7 strangers, and put cameras in front of them and said, let's see what happens. That was The Real World. Then they created another show called Road Rules, where they put people into a camper and they traveled across the country and they had different missions that they had to compete. So sometimes they may have to like climb a mountain. They may have to, I don't know, go like skydiving or something like that. Like it was pretty, Road Rules was pretty adventurous. And Theo Von was on Road Rules. So that was my first introduction to Theo Von. And one of the things I remember about him is that, he didn't come from money. And some of the people that were in that camper with them kind of did. They were kind of privileged, a little, well off, and he didn't come from that. So he grew up poor, and that was something that he, talked about also during the show. I think that could be that experience from Road Rules and the way that he grew up. Maybe that could be part of the reason why he seems to be open to having different perspectives come onto his show. Like I said, he had JD Vance on there, but he also had Bernie Sanders on there, right? So just something to keep in mind. I don't think a lot of people knew about Theo's family's backstory, which he's going to get into here, which does involve immigration. Listen to this.
And I have a lot of thoughts about immigration, right? I have a ton of them, and we don't need to go into them all right now. I've talked about them on other episodes. I feel like they're doing a lot of bookkeeping in the country right now because we're going to get into a surveillance state and everyone is going to have to be on the books, right? So that's where I believe that we're headed.
That's the part that I was trying to get across to a lot of people. Yeah, people need to understand this crackdown against immigration isn't just going to be about people who are here illegally. Ultimately, this is going to be a springboard to increase surveillance. I said the same thing about the police raids that are happening in Chicago, that happen in DC, et cetera. They are going to use these excuses. They're going to use illegal immigration. They're going to use crime. These 2 factors that I know of in particular. I don't know. There could be other ones down the line. I believe they're going to use these 2 in particular as an excuse to ramp up the police state, to increase surveillance, and to what he was saying, like keep these lists. They really want to watch us. And this happens under different administrations. Under the Obama administration, I think a lot of us remember the Patriot Act, right? Remember, Edward Snowden tried to warn people back then that they were watching you. They want to watch us. They want to control us. They want to, they don't want us to have a right of privacy. They really don't want that. They want to spy on you. And so you'll see us get closer and closer to Minority Report. There was just an announcement the other day. There was a woman that was shot by an ICE agent in Chicago. And Phil Scott from African Diaspora, he made a video a couple days ago telling people something's going to end up happening with these raids. Someone's going to go too far and it's just going to be total chaos. Right? So it's not that Theo Von is against deportation. It sounds like to me he takes issue with the way that it's being done under this administration. Let's continue on.
But this was just wild, and people are like sending messages and like hateful stuff. And, you think all these illegals should, and all this type of shit. And like, I could talk to you ad nauseum about that, but this wasn't the time for it. It just was something that they used and put out there and everybody saw. Right. So I'm getting a ton of hateful stuff and I'm trying to remember everything. I'm trying to kind of remember everything right now. And, But this video goes everywhere, and I'm getting like a lot of like, dude, what the fuck? Just all kind of shit, right? Like my phone just blowing. I'm like, what the hell? It's just like the last thing I needed, right? There's a week left to this special, and this happens. You know, this thing comes out. And my father immigrated here from Nicaragua, right? Like one of my prized possessions is I have his immigration papers when he came here. And I have them in a frame, and him and his siblings when they came here. And so I have tons of thoughts about it, but this was just fucked up, right? It was fucked up.
How many people knew that? How many people knew that Theo Von's father immigrated here from Nicaragua? How many people knew that? I don't think a lot of people knew that. Now, Theo Von has had these, you know, a lot of people are coming down on him recently because he had a comedy show and people said he kind of bombed. And he's talking about some of the things that happened prior to that show where he just kind of like mentally, I guess, just was not there to perform on the stage, right? But it's obvious he seems to have a problem with the way it's being carried out.
And it was everywhere. It was like on all platforms and stuff. So that had me really kind of paranoid. You know, that had me start to get kind of paranoid and, you know, like closing, like, you know, I had the curtains in my house kind of closed. I was just like, you know, you're paranoid. I woke up the next morning. Sorry, I need some water. I woke up the next morning to a text from a high government official saying, hey, if you need some extra security in your neighborhood or some extra police cars on patrol, let me know. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Extra security? I don't have any, like, you know, I don't even know the code to my Ring camera. Like, I don't even know how to log in. So it's like, and like, what, you're just going to put police cars in my neighborhood? What are my neighbors going to think? Now they're fearful. Like, it just like, I don't know, man. That like really kind of shook me. It really kind of shook me. But you keep marching on.
So yeah, because of that joke that he made, apparently they reached out to him and say, do you need extra protection and all this stuff? And especially with everything that just happened with the Charlie Kirk shooting as well. Some people are getting scared. I've heard it myself behind the scenes from other people that are in podcast space. They are scared. You know, people are saying things like, what if that happens to me? You know, so that type of thing. But obviously starting to push back there a little bit on the way that these things are happening. And he also said this is the one, I think, you know, he's talked about his mental health, like issues before, but there was something he said here.
I saw one thing. It said, bombs Netflix or whatever taping or whatever. Awesome. Thank you, dude. But homie, I was fucking in that bitch, cuz. You should have seen me, dog. You should have seen me. I'm in the ring, bro. And I failed so many times. You could write, write what you want, big dog. Write what you want. It wasn't perfect, man. I'll agree to that. I've gotten so used to times I have failed. It's okay. I eat failure for breakfast, but you fill me up with failure flakes over the years, kids. And it's okay, man. That's part of the job. The first 10 years of doing comedy is failure. So much of my life, the best things that have ever happened on my life have been on the other side of failure. So, I'll say stuff sometimes. I say stuff, right? You know that. If you've listened to this show before or seen anything, you know I say stuff. I would never take my own life. I would never take my own life. Okay? You hear that, Israel? I would never take my own life.
What's that about? Him saying, you hear that, Israel? So you see, something is happening here. Like I said, you're starting to see even people who voted for Donald Trump particularly in the podcast space, asking questions. And we'll have to go back. Like, I don't know if there have been threats that have been made to him behind the scenes from pro-Israel people or Israelis. I don't know. But do you see the message that he said out there to let people know, no, no, no, no. You hear that, Israel? What does that tell you? And I bring this up to go back to this point. Remember, he interviewed JD Vance and he did question him about what was happening in Gaza. Remember this? First of all, that didn't make any sense when JD Vance said, I'm a Republican. Your audience may not know that. At this point, he was already vice president. I don't know what to say. Then, of course, he goes back to the Biden administration. So this was probably the first time Theo may have probably gone off script. Many have pointed out. So I point back to that interview with JD Vance and him questioning about Gaza. Obviously, he talked to Bernie Sanders about this when he interviewed Bernie Sanders on the show as well. And now he is saying, you hear that, Israel? So something's going on. Now, I don't know. And I see someone already said this in the chat. Kat Ferguson said, it tells me he took money from Israel or their direct supporters. That could be the case. And if that is the case, what did I tell you guys? That money comes with strings attached. So it's no longer just Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. It's no longer just them calling out these things, calling out Israel. Also there, he's pushing back on some of the way the immigration stuff is being handled. Now it's Theo too. And the moment you start to go off script, whoever is donating to you, whoever is a sponsor for your show, if they're pro-Israel, they are going to take issue with that. So it almost kind of seems like to me, the joke that he made or whatever was almost put out there in a way to kind of sabotage him or smear him or whatever in a way. And I guess that's why he felt the need to do that video. But what I tell you guys, people do not give you this money, throw money at you like that, just because they like you or think you're nice or think you're doing a good job. These are things to think about. But what it does show you is that there are plenty of people, and I've talked to them, there are plenty of people that supported Donald Trump that is not happy with the policies, the things that he's doing. Now, they may not come out and say that publicly, but behind the scenes and in one-on-one conversations, there are plenty that are not happy. And I think that says something about Donald Trump's administration. Right now, there's a poll. The new poll from Pew Research now says he has a 58% disapproval rating. 58%. That's not good. Not good at all. So, surprise. More people are starting to, and we'll have to pay attention to this. How long is it going to take for other people who have not already bought in? Like, obviously, we know that Officer Tatum is not going to turn. He bought and paid for. We already know that. But how long is it going to take for other people to say, okay, look, this is not right? We'll have to wait and see. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you for the super chat, baby Ethernet. JD serving a Kamala word salad. It's one big party. Crystal Young said, I keep telling people that it doesn't matter what puppet party sits in the White House. It is always continuity of the government agenda. Yeah, especially when it comes to foreign policy. Especially when it comes to foreign policy, ladies and gents. We are moving on to the next story. If you haven't already done so, do me a solid and smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. We are moving on to this Van Jones story. It is now time to roast Van Jones. Are you ready? I'm ready. Okay. Van Jones is not having a good week. And I don't say weekend because this is going to last for a couple of days. Van Jones is not having a good week. He recently appeared on Bill Maher's show, and he made some statements that is not sitting right with a lot of people. Liberals, some conservatives, some people who are not political at all. And what made it even worse is after he said what he said, the audience cheered. So I'm going to show you what Van Jones said and why a lot of people are giving him hell. We'll get into his so-called apology. And then I'm going to show you who Van Jones really is. This is the statement heard around the world that has people handing Van Jones his ass.
But isn't part of that because we had to fold everything into critical race theory, and somehow the Middle East became part of,
I see it differently, and I love this conversation because I think people, those of us who went to college, give a lot more credit to college courses for how the world works than I do. This is not about critical race theory on college campuses. This is about Iran. Iran and Qatar have come up with a disinformation campaign that they are running through TikTok and Instagram that is massive. If you are a young person, you open up your phone and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby,
right.
Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. Like, that's basically the whole thing. So that's not DEI. That is a geopolitical adversary that is deliberately trying to divide the West against itself.
That view is not. But isn't.
Let's hear it again.
Part of that because we had to fold everything into critical race theory, and somehow the Middle East became part of,
I see it differently. And I love this conversation because I think people, those of us who went to college, give a lot more credit to college courses for how the world works than I do. This is not about critical race theory on college campuses. This is about Iran. Iran and Qatar have come up with a disinformation campaign.
Does he have any evidence to prove that? Does he have any evidence to prove that Iran and Qatar, by the way, is an ally of the United States? As Professor Marandi was telling you guys, it's a proxy of the US. Does he have any evidence that proves that Iran and Qatar are running disinformation campaigns on social media, on TikTok, etc.? But we do have evidence that Israel is paying influencers to run disinformation campaigns about Israel and Gaza. But he doesn't say that, and there's a reason why. So, first problem. Second problem.
That they are running through TikTok and Instagram that is massive. If you are a young person, you open up your phone and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby,
right.
Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby.
If you are a young person and that's all you see, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, Diddy, dead Gaza baby, that's what you're seeing because that's what's happening. There was nothing funny about that. It also leads to this idea that Van Jones is basically trying to say the videos that you are seeing of the dead Gaza babies are disinformation campaigns activated by Iran and Qatar. Everybody make the connection. Van Jones is trying to downplay the death toll in Gaza, the number of babies that have been killed in Gaza. He's trying to downplay it. There are reasons for this. He turned off the comments, by the way. He turned off the comments for his apology, which we'll get to in just a second. But I got to show you this. 8 years ago, Van Jones was on CNN and he asked this question after Donald Trump won in 2016. And he said, how do I explain this to my children? Almost in tears. You know, he liked to cry. How do I explain this to my children? So I just want to take you back to that moment just to show you what a hypocrite Van Jones is. Remember this?
First of all, congratulations. Both of you guys were.
We're not there yet.
You're further than anybody said you would be. And I have enough class, and I was raised well enough to say when you outdo.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
When you outdo expectations, good for you. But there's another side to this. People have talked about a miracle. I'm hearing about a nightmare. It's hard to be a parent tonight for a lot of us. You tell your kids, don't be a bully. You tell your kids, don't be a bigot. You tell your kids, do your homework and be prepared. And then you have this outcome, and you have people putting children to bed tonight, and they're afraid of breakfast. They're afraid of, how do I explain this to my children? I have Muslim friends who are texting me tonight saying, should I leave the country?
Pause. Because you see, I wanted to take you back to these remarks from Van Jones when Donald Trump was about to win the election. That's when they were saying it was too close to call in those swing states there, with the exception of New Hampshire, which isn't really a swing state. So I had to show you this. You know why? Because he said, people are saying, how do I explain this to my children? And he said, I have Muslim friends asking, should I leave the country? That was Van Jones 8 years ago. So let's turn this question around on Van. Van, after you said dead baby, dead baby, dead baby, and alluded to this being just disinformation and propaganda by Iran and Qatar, how do you explain that to your children? How do you explain the way that you tried to downplay the death of Palestinian babies to your children, Van Jones? How do you explain that? You brought up 8 years ago, your Muslim friends were asking, should I leave the country? Do you still have those Muslim friends? How do you explain to your Muslim friends the way that you responded there on Bill Maher's show about dead babies? How do you explain that? Do you still have those friends anymore? Because you've been in the pocket of Israel for quite a minute. Quite a minute. This is a perfect example of a black face in a high place. Van Jones, the same guy who came forward years ago, crying on CNN. Oh, what I think about when Joe Biden won is just how proud of my children, just how proud we'll all be. I just keep thinking about George Floyd and what black men go through in this country, and sitting there crying and crying, crying. Mr. Loves civil rights for black people here in the U.S. The way that Van Jones has taken a pivot is absolutely disgusting. Because I say this again, you can't be pro civil rights and downplaying what's happening to the Palestinians in Gaza, trying to pretend like people aren't being killed, babies aren't being slaughtered. You can't be pro civil rights and back a genocidal, evil Zionist state full of supremacists. You can't have it both ways. Pass it on to your friends. This is why I said before, black people supporting Israel, what the hell is wrong with you? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't sit up here, Van Jones, and talk about black men are treated unfairly in this country. Black men are arrested at an enormous rate. The way that black people are treated in this country, which we can provide evidence to prove those things are true. But you can't sit up there and say you're for civil rights and you're for black people having some type of black liberation in this country, and you are shutting down that same type of liberation for Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, and you're backing a genocidal supremacist state. You can't have it both ways. That goes to all of them. But see, Van got paid. Some of us remember Van Jones got paid. There was a different type of Van Jones many years ago. In fact, Max Blumenthal points this out from 2011. I saw Van Jones sporting a keffiyeh at a memorial for Juliano Maricamis in NYC in 2011. 14 years later, He's raking in millions from Israel and its US cutouts and joking about dead Palestinian babies with Bill Maher. Van Jones is the biggest sellout in media I've met. Taylor Lorenz. This is Nazi shit, and it shows the complete disregard these monsters have for human life. Van Jones, it's so many people ratioed Van Jones. I can't put them all here, including people who actually liked Van Jones came after him. So he issues 2 apologies. One here to Dr. Omar Salman. Let's go to him first. He said, truly disgraceful and vile, Van Jones. I'm sorry dead Gaza babies bother you so much. Maybe tell the people paying you to put lipstick on a genocide and stop killing them. That's Dr. Omar. Van Jones responds to him, yeah, I messed up on this one, and I'm sorry. I was trying to raise awareness about foreign adversaries creating chaos online, which is undermining democracy everywhere. But what I said was easily misunderstood, and the way I said it was flat out insensitive. Babies are dying every day in Gaza. Nobody should dispute that fact or make light of it in any way. To the people living in fear and burying family members every day of all ages, I apologize. Nah, so let me make something clear. That's the first apology. Nah, you apologize because you got called out. And you got called out by people who actually supported you. You got called out by people who like Van Jones. Van Jones tries to have it both ways. Van Jones wants to be one of those progressives except for Palestine. You see, he want to try to side with like the Bernie progressive policies on one hand. And then on the other hand, he want to try to say, well, you know, I'm going to go to the conservative convention and say, you know, the conservatives really went after what they wanted. Donald Trump's doing a good job here. He wants to have it both ways. He sat right there on Bill Maher's show. Bill Maher talked down about CRT and all these types of things, and he just sits up there and nods along with Bill Maher. Van Jones is whoever you want him to be at that moment in time. You don't really stand for any damn thing. You took money that you have to be held accountable for. So you caught up in like this pretzel of sorts. But that's what he wanted to do. That's what he wanted. The second apology that came from Van Jones. I made a comment on Real Time with Bill Maher about the war in Gaza that was insensitive and hurtful. I apologize. The suffering of the people of Gaza, especially the children, is not a punchline. I'm deeply sorry it came across that way. What's happening to children in Gaza is heartbreaking. As a father, I can't begin to imagine the pain their parents are enduring, unable to protect their kids from unimaginable harm. I am praying and working for an immediate end to this war and for peace and safety for every family caught in its path. I'm truly sorry for my pain my words caused to people who are already suffering more than anyone should. And then let me show you something. Can you comment to this? Nope, you can't reply. He made it so that no one could reply to this. So here's the thing. Van Jones ain't sorry. Why didn't Van Jones say that on Bill Maher's show? Because that's not what he's paid to say. He's not sorry. The only reason he's delivering an apology is because he got roasted by so many people, including those who actually liked him. Let me show you something. Don't let Van Jones fool you. Van Jones is a pathetic Hasbara propagandist who follows an account called Hot IDF Army Girls on Instagram. Watch this. Watch this. Check this out. And that's his account too. 1 million followers. Following, see, you can see this on Instagram. Hot IDF Girls. And if you go to Hot IDF Girls, followers, Van Jones, Van Jones. So Van Jones is in the pocket of Israel. Okay. He knew exactly what he was saying and the way that he said it. And this is not the first time. Can we go to part 2 here of Type VNC, please? This is not the first time. I called this out a while back. This guy is very sneaky. You pull this up here. Margaret Kimberly said Van Jones has been an apologist for genocide for a while. So glad I already hated him. That's coming from Margaret Kimberly from Black Agenda Report there. The Israel March in November 2023, where he got booed by pro-Israel people. Listen to this.
Let's take a stand here against anti-Jewish bigotry. Let's take a stand against Muslim. Let's take a stand here against hatred. Let's take a stand here against hatred of all kinds. Let's take a stand here against anti-Jewish bigotry. Let's take a stand against Muslim.
Many of us called this out at that point in time. He was speaking at that pro-Israel rally. Don't let Van Jones fool you. Van Jones don't care about those Palestinian babies. Van Jones is paid to care and be pro-Israel. He's in that camp. So there he was there, pushing back on Muslims. He's also cozied up with Rabbi Shmuley. I mean, you can't make this up, guys. It's so obvious.
Van Jones really is an American hero. He is such a friend of the Jewish community. He wears the pin on CNN. What I love about Van is that he makes so much sense, and he's so candid. And of course, we don't have to agree on everything. But the love that you have shown our community, and
the love that your community has shown my community for 100 years is where the Senate starts. And we've been together for 100 years. We're going to be together for 100 more. And it's an honor to be here today.
Thank you.
Love you, brother.
Just know that for you to be here on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz is a really big deal. Well, and our community really appreciates it. God bless you.
To be here with a legend like you is an honor beyond words. Appreciate you, brother.
Van Jones called this genocidal hack, Rabbi Shmuley. He called him a good brother. So you see this, I think Van Jones is getting a surprise this week because everybody's coming at him. We can go back again to this clip here. Listen to what he said about Israel here.
Supporting the wrong people. The Palestinians deserve all the support in the world. Their cause is just. They want human rights. They want dignity. They want sovereignty. That's beautiful. And it's been hijacked by a Nazi organization called Hamas, who are terrible. They are not freedom fighters. They're freedom takers. They are not interested in democracy. They're not interested in human rights. They're not interested in women's rights. They're not interested in gay rights.
See, those things apply to Israel, right? So he brings up the LGBTQ community. They can't get married in Israel either.
In anything that we care about over here, they are trying to destroy Israel way more than they're trying to help the Palestinians.
Yeah.
It's a Nazi organization. And I don't care if you're a Muslim Nazi, a Christian Nazi, a Jewish Nazi, a Buddhist Nazi. If you're a Nazi, I'm against you first. And then we work out everything else. So when you have a good cause that's been hijacked by bad people, that's tough. And so you got to be able to talk about this stuff honestly. But yeah, like I've had people, pull money out of things I'm a part of, but who cares?
You care because you still wanted to be in the camp some way, shape, or form. So he mentions I've had people pull money out of things that I've been a part of. We're going to get to that in just a second. Hold on, folks.
Nothing compared to what those kids went through at the Nova Festival. Nothing compared to what the people went through at the kibbutz. You got to remember, I'm a progressive.
Yeah.
So Hamas attacked my people.
Yeah.
Those are my people.
Exactly.
On the kibbutz.
No. This is that whole progressive except Palestine BS. And this is what I told you guys before. We cannot work with any and everybody. This is the big warning I've been trying to tell you guys. Do you see what is happening? How people have co-opted that word progressive? And they're just basically using it to say, yeah, the progressives are supposed to be the pro-Israel people. Nah, If you're progressive, you're supposed to be for humanity. You're supposed to be for humanitarian causes, human rights. So why would you support the genocidal state of Israel that is killing the Palestinian people, that swept them off of their own land and put them into an open air prison? That's not progressive. That is colonization. That's colonialism. It is the final stage of colonialism. And this is a warning I pointed out before. You have to be very careful for those who still support the progressive through the Democratic Party lane. You got to be very careful and hope that those particular people who are progressives in the Democratic Party do not water down what that means so that now progressive is actually to the right of being progressive. This is why I said it is so important. There are some things you cannot bend on. There has to be red lines at some point in time. And I would think a genocide would be a red line. There were progressives who wanted you to overlook that. This is how you get here. When you have a Van Jones who is moving the line of what it means to be progressive. This is where you get. We'll let it finish here.
Those are liberals. Those are my people.
The most liberal in the country.
Those are my people. I'm a progressive. So Hamas pushes through with bulldozers and butchers my people. Progressive, liberal, peace-loving, social justice people were murdered and butchered.
So now the Israelis are social justice people. Does everybody see what is happening here? The same social justice people that don't like black people there. The same social justice people that spit on Brandon Tatum and he bragged about only getting spit on once. The same social justice people that harass Christians who go there. The same social justice people that called Palestinians animals, savages, said kill them all, said the babies are Hamas, a camera is Hamas, the dog is Hamas. The same social justice people that had pro-Israel paid influencers go to a historically black college to harass the black students on campus. Van Jones said those are his people. They don't even like Van Jones. They just use him. He's a puppet. Congratulations. You're a puppet. That's it. They use you for that. They use people like Van Jones so they can point to him and say, see, we're not racist. Van Jones is here. We're not racist. There's Ethiopians that live here. Won't tell you that they sterilized them against their will. Won't tell you that part. This person said it well. The yellow ribbon says it all, Van. You wore sympathy for the hostages while mocking Gaza's dead babies. This wasn't a slip. It was a worldview. Look at it. It's Van Jones. If we were back during the days, it's so funny. People try to say things about me, but I'm going to keep it very real. First of all, I stand up and advocate for black people. You never see me not do that on this show. Van Jones, I really do believe, had we been back during slavery times, he would be the one to sell out. He would have been the one that would say, yes, master, can I shine your shoes? What can I do for you? He would have been the one to throw the slaves that were trying to rebel under the bus. He'd be the snitch. This is who he used to be. See, this is back in the day when Van Jones had dreads. I think he has dreads here. When he was an activist.
Now, if students can do that in 1960, the students can do that in 1970, the students can do that in 1985 and 86, in 1993, when we have the United States government building a death camp, a concentration camp, for black people who have done nothing wrong but get sick and want justice. That's all they've done wrong. If we can't close that death camp, if this generation cannot prevent another Japanese American internment in our lifetime, we should all get haircuts and go get regular jobs and give it up.
Yeah, it's funny because that's what he did. He got a haircut, got a regular job, and gave it up. This is what I was talking about when I said they take people who are activists. They get people who are activists and they offer them something. They get someone who has a bold voice, particularly a lot of times, especially in the Black activism. They'll find someone that has a bold voice, someone that is, as they say, well-spoken. They'll get them and say, wow, that person would be powerful if we could get them on the pro-Israel side. They would be a great pro-Israel politician, a great pro-Israel advocate or commentator. That guy would be great. But he's going to have to get rid of the dreads. We're going to have to put him in a suit. We're going to have to make him look a little bit different. Van Jones sold out. That's why he turned off those comments on that apology, because he knows people know how he changed. This guy switches his position depending on who's in the room. And I want to remind you of this since he brought up money. Shout out to Black Agenda Report. Let's all remember when Jeff Bezos gave Van Jones that $100 million. In 2023, in August of 2023, right before October 7th, something happened with Van Jones and that money. Van Jones forced out of nonprofitdream.org despite Bezos' huge contribution. Want to get into this a little bit more here. Yada, yada. Van Jones was praised by Jeff Bezos for being a great philanthropic leader. In the same breath, Jeff Bezos gave Jones a hefty check of $100 million to use as needed. Everybody remember this? Now, Jones was elated by this grand action and was believed to have used it toward his nonprofit Dream.org. Dream.org is a nonprofit co-founded by Van Jones and Matt Haney, focusing on addressing climate change, mass incarceration, and poverty by advocating for new legislation, teaching low-income children how to code, and creating green jobs. However, according to the Daily Beast, Jones left the board this summer after struggling to agree on the organization's direction with the leadership team. Allegedly, a direct source is saying Jones did not leave willingly. So, when people give you money, if someone gives you $100 million, they're not giving this to you just because they think you're nice or you're doing a good job or they just like you. There is a string attached, regardless of what Jeff Bezos said. Now, they gave you that money to use towards the organization that he was a part of. Then he was ousted from the organization. In other words, the money was meant to be used in a different way. You really think Jeff Bezos is going to give you $100 million for nothing? Van Jones has moved in such ways where he just, like I said, he wants to fit in with whoever is at the table at that point in time. Now, I didn't watch this man cry on CNN multiple times. The actor in him. I have watched him sit up there and talk about how do you go to your children after Trump won in 2016. I heard him talk about in 2024 how progressives got it wrong. Not progressive, excuse me. The Democratic Party got it wrong. And that's why Trump won in 2024. He just jumps on whatever is there. But prior to that, he was telling you that Kamala was the way to go. He was telling you she's running a great campaign. Then afterwards, he tells you, oh, no, they got it wrong. It's just all over the place. He's just, this is another black face in a high place. Van Jones is not there to really help out you. As you can see how he got booted from his own organization after they got that money. And now he's just a pro Israel puppet. That is what Van Jones is. That is who Van Jones has become. That's who he's out there advocating for. When the last time you hear Van Jones talk about mass incarceration? When last time? So he sold out to get a bigger paycheck. That's what's happening, folks. He is not sorry for that comment. He only made an apology because he got hammered by a lot of freaking people online from different sides of the political aisle. That's why he came out and said what he said. Not truly because he's sorry. So Van Jones got a surprise, and I don't think he's having a good week. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you, Kenman. Van Jones called Kim Kardashian a genius lawyer. Thank you, Chisel. Owens came public with the same statement. What statement? You have to let me know. Thank you, Kenman. Black faces in low places will not save you. Shout out to Cheetah, who's been a member for 11 months. Is Van Jones bought and paid by Zio now? It appears to be that way. It appears to be that way. Jerry, Sabby, you've got it the other way around. The Van Jones you see today is and was the real Van Jones. The old clips you see of him playing the young revolutionary in the past was the act. That's an interesting point there, Jerry. Interesting. Let's get the comment on Rockfin and we'll keep this show on the road. Yo. Hey. Thank you for the comment on Rockfin, Roger. Okay, so what if it were a disinformation campaign by Qatar and Iran? Let's ask the question to Mr. Jones. Are you making the claim that those dead baby videos are fake? Now he says, we tell our children, don't be racist, don't be a bigot in regards to Trump. Was he not paying attention to Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush again, Nixon, the Roosevelts, Andrew Johnson, LBJ? Thank you for this one. If you are not going to speak to the moral issue of genocide because you are too afraid, then just say Israel, Ukraine, whoever is not entitled to our weapons. If they want to fight Hamas, then let them do it on their own dime with the weapon they already conned us out of. Van is that half of Gen X from FBA who continue to roll with those who hail from civil rights era who aligned with Zios. Yeah, guys, we cannot let people get control of that narrative where they're like, oh, it's okay to be progressive except for Palestine. No, that's not. You either for civil rights or you against it. Stuff is crazy to me. It's crazy to me. All righty. Smash that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so, folks. We are moving on to the next story. Oh boy, this is a big one. Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 4 years in prison. And judging by the look on his face in those courtroom pictures, I don't think he was expecting to go to jail. I think that Diddy thought that he was going to walk. And I think there are a lot of people who thought that. But that is not the case this week. He has been sentenced to 4 years, and that is for trafficking. Let's go ahead and get into this. And then we're going to show you a comparison because there is a pastor who pled guilty to sexually assaulting a minor. Did he get 4 years? Let's get into it.
Tonight, a judge telling Sean Diddy Combs he abused his power and control with women he professed to love and must serve a substantial sentence, handing him 4 years in federal prison. The judge said he considered Combs' family and career, but was not assured these crimes will not be committed again. Earlier, Combs pled with the judge for leniency. I beg your honor for mercy, he said, to be a father again, to be a son again, and be a leader in my community again. He apologized to his former girlfriends and said he took full accountability and responsibility for his actions. Combs sobbed as he turned to his mother and said, "You raised me better." What did you make of today's sentencing?
It was very painful. I was truly hoping for Sean to be coming home to his family. It was very disappointing.
Today's sentencing comes 3 months after Combs was convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. He was acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering.
Pause. This is the part I do want us to see, okay? So here's the conviction. Convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, which is illegal. He was acquitted on sex trafficking and racketeering. So he is not found guilty of sex trafficking or racketeering. This is important for people to really see, because I see people saying this stuff online, but they're not actually looking at what the conviction was. The conviction was the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. So does everybody understand that? He was not found guilty for sex trafficking or for racketeering. He's found guilty on providing the transportation for prostitution. Let's continue.
Sex trafficking and racketeering. Combs's lawyers had asked the judge for a lighter sentence, 14 months, arguing today he is clear-headed, drug-free, determined, focused, and remorseful. Combs's PR team producing this 11-minute video played in court today.
Put everything you can into your work.
Emphasizing his charity work and role as a father. The judge also heard emotional statements from Combs's 6 kids, who said he's a changed man. The music mogul breaking down, holding his head in his hands as they spoke. Prosecutors had asked the judge for a stiffer sentence, 11 years, arguing this is not a person who has accepted responsibility. They asked the judge to consider letters written by victims. Prosecutors also told the judge that Combs had speaking engagements lined up beginning next week in Miami, which they called the height of hubris. The defense pushing back, calling them teaching events for prisoners. Tonight, the judge telling Combs, this is hard time in prison, away from your family, but you will have a life afterwards.
Chloe joins us now from outside court. And Chloe, take our viewers inside. How did Combs react to that sentence, and will he get time served?
Tom, Combs was stoic as the judge handed down the sentence. But as he left the courtroom, he turned to his family and he said, I love you. I'm sorry. I'll be okay. He is going to get time served, just over a year, which means he's looking at a little over 3 years in federal prison. But it could be slightly less for good behavior.
We thank you for watching.
Yeah, they cut her off there. I guess they said, you got to go. So that part everybody needed to see. I agree with you guys here. I don't know who did the artwork, but those pictures, I was like, who drew this? Like, that was like wild, right? So he is going to jail, and you'll see it here with the artwork. This is what I was talking about. Like, who did these pictures? Courtroom sketches here of Diddy crying during his sentencing. That right there tells me, I think he believed he was going to walk. I really do. I think he thought that he was going to get off from this, but that didn't happen. This one right here is the one that's really cracking me up. Like, who drew this? Interesting, huh? And then there's another one here. It says the courtroom sketch shows Diddy falling to his knees after hearing the verdict. This is another one that lets me know that he did not think that he was going to get sentenced to prison. More time, actually, because he already has time that is served. So 4 years he has been sentenced for his crimes here. And something else happened too. According to Diddy's lawyer, he said that Diddy was almost the victim of a stabbing in the prison. So listen to this. Diddy's lawyer claims Mogul was nearly stabbed in jail. Brian Steele claimed a guard stopped the attack before it happened. And that makes you wonder if he's really going to be safe in jail. Sean Diddy Combs' legal team claimed that he was almost stabbed by another inmate while he was incarcerated at NYC's detention center. This is according to TMZ and Inner City Press. During Diddy's sentence hearing for his federal trial, his lawyer, Brian Steele, claimed that Diddy's been targeted while at MDC Brooklyn because certain people believe they'd gain status in the jail if they were to attack him. So that is interesting there. Now, he is going to jail. He already served 1 year. So 4 years for transportation for prostitution. Not convicted on sex trafficking, not convicted on racketeering. Now we're going to compare another case because somebody else got sentenced this week. There was a pastor. His name is Robert Morris. He is the founder of Gateway Church. He just pled guilty to child sex abuse charges. Let's get into this one here.
He once preached the word of God, but now the letter of the law has caught up with Pastor Robert Morris. Cameras captured him handcuffed, escorted out of an Oklahoma court after pleading guilty to 5 counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. Cameras also captured the woman who waited 4 decades for justice. Cindy Clemishire says Morris sexually abused her for years in the 1980s, starting when she was just 12.
People should not be able to do this to children or to adults and get away with it.
Now, more than a year after her story made headlines and led the once powerful megachurch pastor to resign, Clemishire says she has a new beginning. Quote, "I leave this courtroom today not as a victim, but a survivor."
Yeah, I do want to say something here. Black Uni Gryphon says 4 decades. Yes, there is no statute of limitations for children. So if you abuse a child, they can still come back as an adult and file against you. So I want to remind you guys again, she was a minor. She was a kid. And this is a pastor. And I tell you guys something. Remember, you got to be careful who you trust, because just because someone is a pastor doesn't mean they may not be a danger to your child. It just reality. But this guy, and he pled guilty. He's not saying he didn't do it. Let's continue. Wait till I tell you how much time he got. Wait for it.
I was very sexually immoral as a teenager.
Morris preached to his Gateway Church in Southlake of his past, quote, sins. They were crimes. His lawyers say while he believes he long since accepted responsibility in the eyes of God and that Gateway Church was a manifestation of that acceptance, he readily accepted responsibility in the eyes of the law by virtue of his guilty plea. Gateway declined to comment. As part of a deal struck with prosecutors, Morris will serve 6 months of a 10-year sentence, pay more than $250,000 in restitution, and register as a sex offender.
He is going to serve 6 months in jail for sexually abusing a child. 6 months. And he said he was guilty. This is why I say when people, and by the way, people are like losing it over this one. I saw some comments online. People on the left and people on the right they're really lashing out about this one. The fact that this guy is only going to get 6 months for sexually abusing a child. By the way, that's just the one that came forward. Chances are, if he abused her and got away with it for as long as he did, chances are he may have abused other children as well. Especially in a position like pastor where people are more likely to trust you because you're a man of God.
His lawyers say he, quote, looks forward to fulfilling this penance. The pastor, who once advised a president and preached weekly to a flock 100,000 strong, is now one of 137 inmates in a county jail. Reporting from Dallas, I'm Cole Sullivan.
And I'm here to tell you guys, this one, like I said, people are not, don't get me wrong. I'm telling you, people ain't happy about this, as they shouldn't be. Robert Morris, 6 months in prison for sexually abusing a child sparks fury. And you can see what some people are saying here. People have expressed outrage over the Texas megachurch pastor, Robert Morris, only having to serve 6 months in jail after he admitted to sexually abusing a 12-year-old girl in the 1980s. He admitted to 5 felony accounts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. This is crazy. This is absolutely, again, he was the founder of one of these mega churches, Gateway Church in Texas. Her name was Cindy Clemishire. She said she was abused. She was 12 years old. And again, he pled guilty. what people are saying. This woman here, predator pastor Robert Morris has pled guilty to sexually abusing a child, but thanks to a plea deal, why? He'll only serve 6 months in jail. How long do you think it will take before some stupid church forgives him and makes him pastor again? And here's the thing. Who's to say that this hasn't continued to happen all along? Who's to say he hasn't been abusing people this whole time? Like, you never know. I'm willing to bet you it wasn't just one person. I'm willing to bet you, because people who are in powerful positions where they are in control, if they can get away with one, it is not uncommon for them to abuse multiple people. 6 months in jail. Everybody need to speak up. Here's another one. Republicans against Trump said former Trump spiritual advisor and Texas megachurch pastor Robert Morris pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a girl. He will only serve 6 months in jail and pay. So they're speaking out against this as well. Has Donald Trump said anything about this? And going back to the Diddy thing, Diddy, it was said at one point, was hoping that Donald Trump would pardon him. Surprise. Doesn't seem like that is happening. 4 years for providing transportation, 6 months for sexually abusing a child. This is why I continue to say the justice system is not fair. There's no justice in the justice system. It's an injustice system. The criminal justice system is not fair. I think the judge, I think they want to make an example out of Diddy. The fact that they found him not guilty on sex trafficking, that's a big deal. But Robert gets 6 months sexually abusing a child. Let that sink in, folks. What I tell you, everybody with the microphone should be talking about this. Everyone with the podcast should be talking about this, but they're not going to, because a lot of them only want to push the agenda that they believe fits their narrative. Oh boy. Let's go to some of the comments. Oh, we'll save those actually, because Eric's going to do closeout. We have one more story to discuss, and this one is a doozy. So if you haven't done so, smash the like, ladies and gents. Thank you. If you're just joining and you're wondering why I went live so early on a Sunday, it's because Professor Marandi was here and he is in Tehran, and there is a 9.5-hour difference. All righty, let's get back to the business. Okay. Tucker Carlson revealed something about the IDF recently on his podcast, and he also had this discussion with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's also been on this show as well. People are asking more questions about Israel and the ability that Israel has to make decisions in the U.S. government. And recently, apparently, it has been leaked that the IDF has been speaking to the Pentagon. Why is the IDF speaking to the Pentagon? Is it possible that the IDF is telling the Pentagon what to do? Let's get into it. Tucker Carlson exposing the IDF actions in the U.S.
During the 12-day war, such as it was with Iran, the U.S. and Israel versus Iran, bombing on all sides. During that short conflict, IDF officers in the Pentagon, foreign military officers in the Pentagon, and by the way, they're not the only foreign military officers in the Pentagon, to be clear. There are NATO officers, they're from other countries, British, but there are a bunch of Israeli Defense Force officers in the Pentagon that week. And during that week, ask anyone who works at the Pentagon, they enraged American Pentagon staff by just barging into meetings, giving orders, making demands, and nobody did anything about it. How can a foreign military officer barge into military headquarters, even if invited, but barge into a meeting and start demanding, we want this, we want that, you need to get on this?
How? Exactly. Now, I tried to tell people this a while back about how the NYPD got their training from the IDF, the same tactics that you see the IDF using against people in Gaza and the West Bank. The NYPD uses some of those same tactics against people right here at home in the US. They're trained by the IDF. Now we have the IDF barging into Pentagon meetings. What? Meanwhile, they have you focused on everything else. They got you focused on hating your neighbor. They have you focused on the culture war stuff. They have you focused on what is a woman, who can use what bathroom, who can do all this stuff. You literally have soldiers from Israel interrupting Pentagon meetings. What the fuck? And everyone should be up in arms about this. Imagine if no other country would be able to do this. Like Russia couldn't just barge in and say, hey, China couldn't just barge in and say, listen up. The IDF can just walk right into the Pentagon and start wagging their finger and telling them what they better do. Why aren't these Pentagon officials speaking up? Who are they really working for? Is it really about them protecting America? Because I don't think it is. What is happening here? And I'm willing to bet this has happened before, but we're just now hearing about it. This probably has been going on for years as far as we know. We don't know. This could have been happening for years. Did they barge into the Pentagon after September 11? Just asking. Let's continue.
Huh? The more you allow that kind of deeply unhealthy behavior, the more you're going to get. And that's exactly what has happened. Because of the weakness of our leaders, we have incited predators in a foreign country to take advantage of us. Oh, that's such an anti-Israel thing to say. It's not anti-Israel at all. It's a demand that the people whose job it is, whose sacred duty it is to defend and represent us, our leaders, both at the Pentagon and all throughout the U.S. government, that they do that they stand up and defend us against all potential threats, against all foreign countries to the extent they need to, and that they do not prostrate themselves before a foreign nation. That's just basic. Why have a government, especially a strong government, if it's taking orders from another weaker government? And that is the state of play. And it has been for a very long time. And they're not even pretending.
No, they're not pretending. It's all out in the open now. And so to Tucker Carlson's point, when he says, why even have a government if this is what is going to happen? To give people the illusion of democracy. Because if we had real democracy, people wouldn't try to, I don't know, give super delegate votes to a candidate that didn't get votes in that state. If we had true democracy, we wouldn't even have an electoral college. People starting to get it. If we had true democracy, we wouldn't have representatives represent us. We would vote on what policies we want, just like we do with the ballot measures in the ballot initiative states. What we have are representatives that don't represent us. They're basically there to represent corporations, lobby interest groups, the military industrial complex. That's really who they work for, not us. They're there to give us the illusion that they're going to do something for us and represent us, but they don't. They're basically just bought off by big money, and That's their role. We have presidents that are also owned and bought off by Israel and Big Pharma. All of these people in DC are working for big money interests and not ours. And now you're hearing about the Pentagon. Now, Jeffrey Sachs was also on Tucker Carlson's show as well. So listen to this. Abir said the dam is cracking. Tucker is asking the forbidden question. Tucker asked the biggest question about Israel that Washington won't touch.
May I ask you, you said a moment ago that no American president has ever constrained Israel in a meaningful way. I think George
in the modern period.
Yeah,
certainly,
George H.W. Bush
yes.
kind of tried, and there was talk of an assassination attempt against him, and he lost, of course, after one term. But why do you think that is? Why is a country of 9 million people able to dictate terms to a country of 350 million people?
Well, first of all, there's no legitimate reason for that. In other words, there's no intrinsic U.S. interest in any way, whether it's military or security or economic, for this to be the case. There's no moral reason for this to be the case. In other words, one could support Israel without supporting Israel's reckless extremism and militarism and all its wars. And so there's no reason for the United States government to have given a blank check, actually handed our military and our intelligence over to Israel to tell us what to do.
Unless, as I've pointed out before, the whole idea is that Israel is just a military base in the Middle East. That Israel is an extension of the United States as a military base in the Middle East under this facade of being a safe place for Jewish people. Israel's a secular state. It's not there's Christians, there's people that practice Judaism as well. Like there's different things. Now they have all those things there, and it's a secular state, but under that system they also have apartheid, where a Palestinian Christian may have a different passport than someone who is Jewish. I really do believe this. I really do believe that's all Israel is, just a military base disguised as something else.
There's no legitimate reason for this. The question why this is the case is, of course, I think to all of us, even no matter how much on the inside we are or how many decades we've watched this, a bit of a mystery.
Yes.
And because I've seen this close up for more than 50 years. And if you ask me, am I really sure why Netanyahu, who is a absolutely disgusting warmonger, who has dragged us into terrible wars, who is committing massive war crimes, why he gets 57 standing ovations in the US Congress? If you ask me in my heart, do I really understand that? Is it the AIPAC lobby, the Israel lobby? Well, partly. Is it blackmail by Israel? Because there's no doubt a lot of credible claims of Epstein and more about blackmail. Is it that? Is it direct bribes? Is it fear of American politicians? Is it the mainstream media, which for a lot of reasons owned by a lot of billionaires that tend to be rather ardent Zionists? Is it the large Christian Zionist vote base, which is also a real thing? to tell you the truth, none of it really adds up.
I agree.
In full, because this is not in America's interest. It's not in America's interest to be isolated in the world together with a murderous rogue state, which
It is in America interest if the U.S. government wants to support colonialism. Israel is the last stage of colonialism. This is it. If they want to support it in an effort to drive the Arab people out for economic reasons for the United States to have access to the resources that are also there and not have to worry about Iran. I'm just looking at it from the US government perspective. This is how they'll think. Like, this would be the way to get Iran out of the picture and support the greater Israel project. They don't want them there. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, I mean, yeah, he's the prime minister, but you put someone else in that position, they'll be doing the same thing because they all support the colonial project. They all support it. What do you think would have happened if, I think about this sometimes. What do you think would have happened if Israel wasn't created? Let's say Israel wasn't created in the Middle East. They would have created it somewhere else. This colonial project. Now, then they do it under the guise of, but they got to be they got to be in the Middle East because, that's the Holy Land. The religion excuse, that's just a disguise. They're using religion to explain why they need to be there, but it's a secular state. I think if everybody just look at things for what they really are and look at what has happened in the world. We have watched the US and Britain, other Western countries destroy other countries in the world, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Haiti. There was colonialism in the Bahamas, Jamaica, Barbados, all the Caribbean. There was colonialism there. There's colonialism in the Dominican Republic. It's been all over the world. The religion piece is an excuse. But this is still an effort of supporting colonial expansion, which is a European idea. It's a European construct. So if someone were to ask me, does the United States government support colonial expansion? I would say yes. And I would point to Israel. Let's continue on here.
Which is sad to say what the Israeli government has become. It is the most lawless state in the whole world right now. It's committing massive war crimes. It is, as Netanyahu said, at war in 7 fronts. If you're at war in 7 fronts, that's pretty weird. That shows you don't have diplomacy. You have war as a policy. And of course, Netanyahu does have war as a policy.
And see, it's not just Benjamin Netanyahu. That's also the thing. Let's show that poll, please. Not just Benjamin Netanyahu. It's the whole part of Zionism in the beginning, the whole part of Zionism was to basically make sure that you would continue this colonial expansion. And this is why you have people that live in Israel that are from Brooklyn, New Jersey, California. And you have people moving there from Poland, Ukraine, Russia, and then changing their name to make it seem like they're indigenous. They're not indigenous. Yes, there were Jewish people that were living there alongside with the Palestinian people before the Zionist expansion came in. But a lot of the Israelis, the people who are there now, were settlers. Same thing for the West Bank. So that's what this is really about. And people try to look at this in other different ways. And a lot of people will say, oh, it's about religion. It is not about religion. That is the excuse. Because if it was about religion, then they wouldn't have sterilized the Ethiopian Jewish women against their will. They sterilized them because they did not want them to reproduce, and then lied to them and told them they were giving them something that they weren't giving them. So they did it against their will. The sooner people wake up and see that this is not about religion, the better off everybody will be. Got to pay attention to what's happening in the world, folks. I think we have the poll results. Let's take a look at those. Thank you so much. Will Israel-Iran conflict happen again? Who will start it? Okay, 5% say yes, Iran will strike first. 78% say yes, Israel will strike first. 4% say no, it won't happen again. And 12% say I have no idea. All righty. Thank you. Interesting. That is it for me, guys. I know I was early today, but like I said, Professor Marandi's in Iran, so the time zone difference there. That's why I went live earlier. For next Sunday, I'll be back to my regular time. But thank you guys so much for hanging with me. Eric's going to close out the show. And Eric, I think we have a couple of super chats.
Sure. All right. And yeah, I would just say, but all right, well, let Sabby go, move on with her Sunday. You can watch, well, you get a choice this Sunday. You can watch football or baseball, right? Lots of that. But yeah, one thing I just wanted to mention is just the other part of this all is to to bring it to demands, right? Well, I mean, first, to know what to demand, you have to know what's really going on, right? And you know, I always, as those of you who've heard me before, Eric T. Red here, by the way, coming from the background production into the foreground, just to close things off. What I always like to focus on is the money and the billionaires, right? And it's about interest, and when you do that, right, when you connect those dots and you can see that, you know, okay, you know, they're all working for the billionaire interests, then the next step you need to get to is, okay, then what is the demand? Because if we're not demanding anything, you know, how can we expect anything, you know, to be to really change? So the demand is what? Get the money out, right? Fix the big money in politics and government. Get them to work in our interests. And, you know, and if you want to see more, you know, about that kind of thing, I'm just going to bring it up here. You can go to 11demands.org. And speaking of interests, there's, all right, so you have the basic starting points here, you know, that you have like key initial demands like healthcare, minimum standard of living, end the wars. And one of the key ones, right, is this end the wars, you know, as a demand. If you go into the end the wars item in the list, right, one of the key ones is and support of all governments that engage in settler colonialism and genocide. You know, cut the military budget, disband NATO, and the sales of military weapons. And I would submit that is really a key driver of what happens in Israel, what happens in Ukraine. It's about the money. All those weapon sales lead to big profits for defense contractors, that old military industrial complex, and that money goes into the pockets of billionaires who get richer and richer. They are literally richer than ever. And then what do the billionaires do with a little bit of that money? They funnel it back into government, into Congress, and they pay off our Congress people. I like to call them Congress critters. So you have the demand of end the wars, but you can't, but the path to ending the wars is you have to fix the big money. You have to fix, and it always goes back to this demand number one, fix big money in politics and government. And then when you get into that one, and when you're having that demand, then the solutions flow from that, because you have to clean up the elections. You have to pass that constitutional amendment that says money's not speech. You have to regulate campaign spending. You have to demand real radical transparency. So, if people are asking, like, how do we fix all this? What do we do about all this? I would submit that this is the path. Have clear demands, and we all need to be making those demands. We all have a role to play, and if we can get that stuff together into a big movement backed by those clear demands, we can really get somewhere. And I would submit if we don't do that, if we're not clear about that, then it's just going to keep happening. So there you go. Check it out at 11demands.org. There's also the 11 Demands Collective if you want to sign up for that. It's basically about saying, yes, this sounds right, and this is something we should all be doing. All right, super chats. We got a few super chats in here. Thanks, Daniel, for becoming a member. Appreciate that. Excuse me. And thanks for this one, Chisel Chipper. Okay. This is in clarifying what Chisel did earlier about the statement. And the statement was, Owen said she would not take her own life. Made that public statement. Gotcha. Thanks for the super chat, Roger. Roger says to Daniel Valdorte, are you the one with the GoFundMe? If so, do you have PayPal, Venmo, Cash App? I think you may be mixing two people up, Roger, but not sure. Next time we have call-in, Zoom Hangout call-in, which will probably be next Tuesday or Thursday, we can talk about it in the Zoom call-in. We'll figure it out. Also for this one, Roger, who says this is back to the Diddy story, saying they Jack Johnson Diddy to Sabrina. Yeah, talking about how they, that discrepancy and so forth. Thanks for this super chat. Break Up Google. Remember Kamala destroying those SA victims' legal cases against the Catholic Church in San Francisco when she got a fat paycheck for it? Yep, that's what they do. That's how they roll. And thanks for this one, Cheetah. Is the pastor a Christian Zio? It seems to be a pattern for Zios. And there was another person in chat posting saying that this guy who got to 6 months was a long-time big supporter of Israel and Zionism. And thanks for this one, Michael R., who says that Donald Rumsfeld said he took orders from the IDF. And thanks for the super chat, William. Israel really owns the USA. The Pentagon is the same symbol as the Star of David. Look up the overhead view of Washington, D.C. The city is satanic symbols. And thanks for the super sticker. Pretty ugly things. Appreciate that. And also thanks for this one, William. No offense, Sabby should read our chat's last one. Okay. All right. So I think that will do us for today. Sorry, just doing a little housekeeping here. So that's going to do our show. You can catch Sabby live. I believe will be next Tuesday, should be our next live show at 7. We'll see what good stuff we have for you then. Like I said, check out 11 Demands if you like what you're hearing there. It's crucial to have clear demands and to know where the buck really stops. And that's with them that has all the bucks, right? And as our Sabrina says, keep up, have a good night or day, if it's still day for you like it is here. And keep up that fight. We'll see you next time.